In the second part of this overview of public education, we're going to examine the outcomes of our public education system, the way the state has defined success around improvement as required by the Constitution, and the measures we have available to trace how our schools are doing over time and compared to other benchmarks. In recent years, the Kansas Supreme Court, the Legislature, the State Board of Education, and the public, through many opportunities for input, have developed many terms and measures to define educational outcomes for successful students, but they fall into three broad areas. First of all, producing successful individuals who are happy, healthy, and safe. Second, producing students who grow up to be successful in their communities, understanding political and economic systems, giving back to their community. And finally, preparing people to be successful economically with the skills and preparation for employment that allows them to live at least a middle-class lifestyle. The State Board of Education has developed a Kansas vision for student success called Kansans Can, and it includes 5 key outcomes to help make Kansas the most successful school system in the world. The State Board has also developed attributes of a successful graduate. Looking in terms of the 3 broad areas, successful as individuals under the Kansans Can vision includes social emotional growth measured locally. In terms of successful citizens in a community, one of the attributes for success is civic engagement. And as far as economic success, the Kansas Can vision includes kindergarten readiness, individual plans of study, high school graduation, and post-secondary completion rates. The definition of a successful graduate includes academic and cognitive preparation, technical and employability skills, success in post-secondary education, attainment of industry-recognized credentials, or in the workforce without remediation. In defining adequate funding for education as part of the suitable provision of funding, the Kansas Supreme Court defined 7 capacities, sometimes called the Rose capacities, for what students should be able to do to be successful. And the Kansas legislature adopted those same 7 capacities as state education goals. Regarding successful individuals, they include knowledge of mental and physical health. Regarding success in a community, they include knowledge of economic, social, and political systems, understanding of the governmental process, and grounding in arts to appreciate cultural heritage. Finally, for economic success, they include communication skills, training or preparation for advanced training to choose life's work, and finally, academic or vocational skills to compete in academics and the job market. Not all of these goals are measured, and many are not measured at the state level or national level to provide comparisons. But we do have some measures that almost all students participate in that allows us to see how Kansas education outcomes have changed over time, how they compare to other states, and how different groups perform. These include long-term educational attainment for all adults, young adult educational attainment for those 18 to 24, high school graduation rates, preparation for college, state reading and math performance, and national reading and math performance. The longest standing and broadest measure of educational progress is educational attainment, which is essentially how much of the population has reached certain educational benchmarks. Since the U.S. Census records begin in 1940, we can track the percent of adults in Kansas and other states who have completed high school, 12 years of schooling, and have completed a 4-year degree. In Kansas, that went from less than 30% of adults in 1940 to about 90% now. And the percent completing a 4-year degree increased from 5% to over 30%. These rates have increased every decade measured by the census, and Kansas has generally exceeded the U.S. average on both. Historical data also shows how over time, different groups within the population have performed differently, and historically some groups have trailed others. For example, in 1940, white Kansans had double the high school completion rate of blacks. Both groups have improved over time, and the gap has narrowed, but in 2017, blacks still trailed Kansans by about 10 percentage points. Likewise, both white and black Kansans have increased 4-year college degree completion. but whites still have nearly double the rate of blacks. Kansas has generally exceeded the U.S. average most years measured for both blacks and whites in both high school completion and bachelor's degree completion. More recently, the census has also provided information on other racial and ethnic groups. White Kansans also have higher high school completion rates than other groups with a large presence in the state, not only blacks or African Americans, but Hispanics, Asians, two or more races. Kansas does better than the national average for all those groups except two or more races when it comes to high school completion. Like most states, white Kansas adults also have a higher college degree completion rate than all groups except Asians. Kansas exceeds the U.S. average for all adults over 24 in both white and black, but is below the U.S. average for Hispanic, Asian, and two or more races when it comes to bachelor's degree completion. Educational attainment is economically important because each level up in education results in higher average income. In Kansas, for example, an individual with a four-year college degree makes more than two-thirds more than one with a high school diploma only, and an advanced degree nearly doubles that income. Higher education levels also result in lower unemployment and poverty rates. This means that because more Kansans are at higher education levels than in the past, Kansans earn more than they would have without this boosted education. At current average pay by education level, Kansans earned an estimated $7 billion more in 2018 than they would have if education levels had been the same as in 1990. The economic benefits of higher educational attainment affects all states. States with higher percentages of adults with college degrees have higher average incomes for their citizens than states with lower attainment. In fact, the top 10 educated states have an average income of more than 40% higher than those in the bottom 10. We've been talking about educational attainment by the population over age 24. The Census Bureau also reports educational measures for the population between 18 and 24 in three areas: the percent that have graduated from high school or the equivalent, those with any college, including technical degrees, associate's degrees, or just college courses for a degree not yet finished, and finally those with a bachelor's degree or higher by the time they're 24 years old. Each of those measures increased in Kansas from 2005 to 2018. But from 2018 to 2019, for the first year, each of those measures declined. Should be noted that while the percentage of young Kansans with a four-year degree is about 11%, remember this age group only spans 6 years, so most individuals could not have completed a four-year degree in that time. Kansas ranks in the top half of states on each of these measures for young adults 18 to 24. But while Kansas improved its rank from 2010 to 2018 in high school completion and any post-secondary, while dropping just 1 point for bachelor's degree completion, the Kansas state rank dropped in all three areas from 2018 to 2019, and especially fell in the area of high school completion. The previous data had looked at high school completion among percent of the state in an age group. Another is the measure of the percent of students who graduate on time. In other words, basically 4 years after entering high school, what percent have graduated. This is called the adjusted cohort graduation rate. And all student groups and each of the major racial and ethnic groups and each gender division in Kansas have improved since that measure was adopted in 2010, and the biggest improvement has come among the lowest performing groups. On this measure, Kansas exceeds the U.S. average for all students and is equal to the U.S. average for low-income students in that adjusted cohort graduation rate. However, the U.S. average has improved more in both areas than Kansas since 2011. Another education measure is readiness for college, which can be measured, for example, using the ACT test. A majority of Kansas students take this test, and a majority of states this is the primary test, although in some other states more students take the SAT. The ACT, among other bits of information, provides the percent of students that have shown that they are at a college-ready level in the disciplines of English, math, reading, and science. Looking at the percent of Kansas college students who qualified as college ready in all four areas, the percent increased from 25% in 2006 up to 32% in 2015. But since then has declined back to 26% between 2005 and 2019. And while Kansas has usually led or been above the U.S. average, the rest of the country, on average, had basically caught up to Kansas in 2019. There won't be, or is not expected to be, a 2020 result nationally or for Kansas because of the COVID pandemic. ACT results are also broken out by different student groups by race and ethnicity. Like other states, Kansas has large differences among these, with white students generally doing better than Black or African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans, not as well as Asians. Kansas performs above the national average for ACT, in this case, 3 of 4 benchmarks, which is what ACT reports, for Black, American Indian, and white students, but is below the U.S. average for Hispanic and Asian students. We've moved from looking at educational attainment by adults over 24 to adult attainment by those 18 to 24. We've then looked at high school graduation, and we've looked at preparation for college. Now let's look at performance of students while they're still in school. State and federal law require Kansas schools to test most students in many grades in reading and math. Kansas has used 2 different tests since 2017, and that's about the time that the federal law fully required all states to participate in this. The percent of students tested at what was called proficient under the old test rose from 2007 through 2012, then dropped sharply in 2013. Under that test, proficient could perhaps be viewed as being on grade level, or on track to graduate, but not necessarily ready for college. The state also reported the gap between all students and low-income students. The low-income students narrowed the gap slightly, but widened back to about 10 points in 2013 when that test was stopped. No valid state tests were given in 2014 as the State Board of Education developed a new set of tests with a different way of measuring results. New tests began in 2015 with 4 levels. Levels 2 and higher, 2, 3, and 4, would consider a student to be at least on grade level. The average percent at that level dropped from 2015 to 2017, sort of following that trend that started on the previous test, and remained flat from 2017 to 2019. About 80% of non-low-income students are at this level, but only about 60% of low-income students. On the new tests, levels 3 and 4 are based on readiness for post-secondary success, higher than the old grade level standard, more pointed to whether students are on track to be able to do college level work. About 40% of students score at this level. It might be worth remembering that about 30% of adult Kansans have a 4-year degree for kind of a comparison of what we have been expecting for college readiness. Like other measures, there are big differences among racial and ethnic groups, with more than double the percent of white students at that higher college-ready level than Black or Hispanic students. These tests are given at grades 3 through 8 and then once in high school. An even lower percent of high school students score at the college level, and the gaps among different groups are even higher. But it is important to note that the high school test is given to sophomores, so some students may simply not have taken the courses to prepare them for college at that level and may get those courses later on. The ACT test given to juniors and seniors indicate somewhat higher preparation for students in math and English. Finally, we should note that those Kansas assessments are only given to students in Kansas and therefore can't be compared to other states. But federal law also has required since the mid-2000s that all states participate in what's called the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This doesn't test all students, only a sample of students at 4th and 8th grade every other year in every state. From 2003 to 2013, Kansas scores were improving on national reading and math tests and exceeded the national average. But since 2013, Kansas scores have dropped and they are now about at the U.S. average. There is also about a 30% gap between high and low income students, both in Kansas and in other states.